There is a particular kind of tragedy that unfolds when someone discovers they are capable of saving an entire universe, but cannot seem to save themselves from their own worst impulses. This is the story that Fionna and Cake Season 2 tells us, and it is a story that resonates far beyond the colourful animation and whimsical multiverse adventures. It is a story about what happens when a hero returns home from the grandest adventure imaginable and finds that the real battle was waiting for her all along. When we last saw Fionna Campbell at the end of Season 1, she had accomplished the impossible. She had travelled across the multiverse, defeated the cosmic enforcer known as Scarab, and restored magic to her once mundane world. She had discovered that she was not merely a fictional construct dreamed up by a mad Ice King, but a real person with agency and purpose. She had saved everything. And yet, as Season 2 opens, we find Fionna struggling with something that no amount of cosmic heroism could have prepared her for, the quiet devastation of ordinary life. The first episode of Season 2, titled The Hare and the Sprout, establishes this tension immediately. Fionna is happier than we have ever seen her. She walks through her newly magical city with purpose, helping her friends, contributing to her community, finally feeling like she belongs somewhere. The citizens recognize her as the person who saved their world. She has everything she thought she wanted, but beneath this surface contentment, something darker is already taking root. Fionna's identity has become entirely wrapped up in being the hero, the helper, the one who fixes things. This might seem like a positive character trait, and in many ways it is. But Season 2 will systematically demonstrate how this need to be essential, to be the one who saves the day, can become its own form of self-destruction. When your entire sense of worth depends on being needed, what happens when the people around you prove they can manage without you? This is the psychological foundation upon which the entire season is built. Fionna is not a villain. She is not even particularly selfish in the traditional sense. She genuinely wants to help people. She genuinely cares about her friends. But she has never learned how to exist without a crisis to solve, without someone to save. Her heroism, which served her so well in the multiverse, becomes a kind of addiction in the mundane world. She needs to be needed, and when that need is not met, she begins to unravel. The season introduces us to Gary Prince and his dream of opening a community gathering space called the Sweet Spot. This becomes the central project around which Fionna's character arc revolves. She throws herself into helping Gary with the same intensity she brought to saving the multiverse. But there is a crucial difference. In the multiverse, Fionna's contributions were irreplaceable. She was the chosen one, the key to everything. In the Sweet Spot project, she is one helper among many. Her friends are capable. Her contributions, while valuable, are not essential. This is where the self-sabotage begins to reveal itself. Fionna cannot tolerate being replaceable. She cannot accept that the world might continue spinning without her at the centre of it. And so, unconsciously at first, she begins to make choices that will ensure her importance, even if those choices ultimately destroy the very things she claims to care about. The psychology here is painfully realistic. Many people who have experienced significant trauma or abandonment develop this same pattern. They become helpers, fixers, the ones who hold everything together. This gives them a sense of control and purpose. But it also means they have never learned to simply exist, to be valued for who they are rather than what they do. Fionna grew up in what the season heavily implies was not a good family situation. One of her pain orbs, revealed later in the season, shows her as a child alone in an animal shelter, finding comfort only with the cats. No mention is made of parents or family. This childhood abandonment shaped Fionna into someone who desperately needs to prove her worth through action. She cannot sit still. She cannot simply be present. She must always be doing something, helping someone, proving that she deserves to exist. And when the opportunity to prove herself is taken away, even by well-meaning friends who simply want to share the load, Fionna experiences it as a kind of existential threat. Season 2 understands this psychology with remarkable precision. It does not paint Fionna as a bad person. It does not condemn her for her flaws. Instead, it shows us exactly how someone good, someone loving, someone heroic, can still destroy everything around them when their own unexamined wounds remain unhealed. Fionna's journey this season is not about defeating an external villain. It is about confronting the villain that lives inside her own mind. To understand Fionna's self-sabotage, we must first understand the nature of impulsivity itself. Impulsive behavior is not random. It is not meaningless. Every impulsive act serves a psychological purpose, even when that purpose remains invisible to the person committing it. Fionna's impulsive decisions throughout Season 2 follow a precise emotional logic, one that becomes clearer the closer we look. The first thing we notice about Fionna's impulsivity is that it almost always occurs in moments of emotional overwhelm. When she feels too much, when the feelings become too big to contain, she acts without thinking. This is not a character flaw in the traditional sense. It is a coping mechanism, a way of discharging unbearable emotional pressure. The problem is that this discharge often causes tremendous collateral damage to the people around her. Psychologists would recognize this pattern as emotional dysregulation. Fionna has difficulty tolerating negative emotions. She cannot sit with discomfort, cannot process feelings at a manageable pace. When distress hits her, it hits like a tidal wave, and she responds by doing something, anything, to make the feelings stop. In the short term, the impulsive action provides relief. In the long term, it creates new problems that generate even more distress, creating a vicious cycle. We see this pattern establish itself early in the season. When Queenie, the antagonistic businesswoman, who represents everything Fionna hates about bureaucratic power, takes over the lot where Gary wants to build the sweet spot, Fionna's response is immediate and physical. She wants to fight. She wants to do something. The idea of navigating legal channels, of playing by the rules, of waiting and planning, feels intolerable to her. She needs action now. This need for immediate action is deeply connected to Fionna's sense of identity. Remember, she defines herself through heroic deeds. A hero does not wait. A hero does not deliberate. A hero acts. But the problems of ordinary life rarely respond well to heroic action. Queenie cannot be defeated with a sword. The housing market cannot be fixed with courage. The slow, grinding work of building community requires patience that Fionna has never developed. The season also establishes a crucial parallel between Fionna and Finn, her counterpart in Oo. Both characters struggle with impulsivity rooted in emotional avoidance. Finn, we learn, has been repressing his trauma for years. His pain tree in the Undergrowth is heavy with unprocessed orbs that never float back up because he refuses to feel them. Fionna operates the same way. She does not process emotions. She converts them into action, and that action often makes everything worse. There is a particular scene in The Crocodile Who Bit a Log that illustrates this dynamic perfectly. Fionna and her friends are trying to strategize ways to reclaim the lot from Queenie. Everyone is brainstorming, contributing ideas, working together as a team. But Fionna is restless. She keeps interrupting. She keeps pushing for faster action. She cannot tolerate the slow pace of collaborative problem solving because it does not give her the emotional discharge she needs. What makes this pattern so insidious is that Fionna genuinely believes she is helping. She genuinely believes that her urgency serves the group's interests. She cannot see that her impatience is actually making things harder for everyone, that her constant need for action is exhausting the people around her. This is the nature of self-sabotage. It always feels justified in the moment. It always feels necessary. It is only in retrospect that the damage becomes clear. The season also shows us how Fionna's impulsivity affects her romantic relationships. She develops feelings for DJ Flame, also known as Felix, but she pursues this attraction in the same impulsive way she approaches everything else. She does not consider the implications. She does not think about how her actions might affect others. She simply acts on her feelings in the moment, leaving wreckage in her wake. By the time we reach the midpoint of the season, a pattern has clearly emerged. Fionna's impulsivity is not random. It is triggered by specific emotional states: feeling replaced, feeling useless, feeling abandoned, feeling overwhelmed. Each time one of these triggers is activated, Fionna responds with an impulsive action that temporarily relieves her distress, but ultimately makes her situation worse. She is caught in a loop she cannot see, repeating the same destructive pattern over and over. The tragedy is that Fionna is not stupid. She is not incapable of reflection. In quiet moments, she shows genuine insight into her own behavior. She knows something is wrong. She knows she keeps making things harder for herself, but knowing is not the same as changing. The impulse hits faster than the insight can catch up, and by the time Fionna realizes what she has done, the damage is already complete. Episode 8 of Season 2, titled "The Insect That Sang," represents the absolute nadir of Fionna's character arc. It is the moment when all of her worst tendencies converge into a single catastrophic decision that will haunt her for the rest of the season. To understand why this episode hits so hard, we need to trace the events that lead up to it. Earlier in the season, Huntress Wizard killed the cosmic owl to save Finn from a croak dream, a prophetic nightmare that would have guaranteed his death. This was an act of desperation and love, the kind of choice that heroes make when faced with impossible situations. But killing a cosmic deity is not without consequences. The multiverse has rules, and those rules have enforcers. Orbo, the cosmic judge, seizes Fionna and Huntress Wizard and transports them to a celestial courtroom to stand trial for the cosmic owl's death. The evidence against them is damning. Scarab, the villain from Season 1, appears as a witness and testifies about seeing them hide the cosmic owl's body. The cosmic jury is unmoved by their explanations. The punishment for killing a deity is an eternity in the pain vortex, though Orbo offers to reduce this to 1,000 years if they plead guilty. This is the moment when Fionna's psychology of self-sabotage reveals its darkest face. Under pressure, feeling cornered, overwhelmed by fear, she makes the most damaging decision of the entire season. She falsely implicates Finn in the cosmic owl's death. She throws the dying hero under the cosmic bus to save herself. The scene is devastating to watch. Huntress Wizard's face registers horror as she realizes what Fionna is doing. This is the same Finn that Huntress has been trying desperately to save all season, The same Finn who lies dying in ooh from magical poisoning. The same Finn who represents everything good about heroism and sacrifice. And Fionna, in a moment of pure survival instinct, condemns him to face cosmic judgment in her place. What makes this betrayal so psychologically complex is that Fionna does not plan it. She does not coldly calculate the best way to escape responsibility. The accusation bursts out of her in a moment of panic, a reflexive attempt to deflect the unbearable pressure she is feeling. This is impulsivity at its most destructive. There is no malice here, only terror, but the result is the same. Someone innocent suffers because Fionna could not tolerate her own fear. The cosmic court accepts her testimony, at least temporarily. Fionna and Huntress Wizard are released pending further investigation, but the damage is done. Finn, who was already dying, now faces the additional burden of cosmic prosecution, and Fionna must live with the knowledge of what she did. She must carry the weight of having betrayed someone who never did anything to hurt her. This is where the show demonstrates its profound understanding of guilt and shame. Fionna does not shrug off what she did. She does not rationalize it away. The guilt hits her immediately, and it hits hard. But instead of processing this guilt in a healthy way, instead of taking responsibility and trying to make amends, Fionna does what she always does when emotions become too big. She acts impulsively, making everything even worse. When she returns to her world, she expects chaos. She expects the fundraiser her friends were planning to have failed without her. She needs it to have failed, because that would prove she is essential, that she matters, that her absence has consequences. But instead, she discovers that everyone succeeded without her. Cake pulled everything together. Marshall Lee gave an emotional performance that rallied the community. The sweet spot was saved, and Fionna had nothing to do with it. For someone whose entire identity is built on being needed, this discovery is worse than failure. Failure would at least confirm that her participation mattered. Success without her proves that she is replaceable, dispensable, unnecessary. The psychic wound this inflicts cannot be overstated. Every abandonment fear Fionna has ever experienced comes rushing to the surface at once. And so she acts. In the midst of this emotional tsunami, Fionna kisses DJ Flame impulsively, right in front of Fennel and Hunter, who had both been developing feelings for her. She breaks multiple hearts in a single moment of thoughtless action. But even this is not enough to discharge the pressure building inside her. The feelings keep growing, the guilt over Finn mixing with the shame of being unnecessary, mixing with the terror of abandonment. Finally, in a moment that will define her for the rest of the season, Fionna climbs into a bulldozer and destroys the sweet spot. She demolishes the very place her friends worked so hard to save. She tears down everything they built, everything they accomplished without her. It is an act of pure destructive rage, but it is also something more. It is an attempt to matter. If she cannot be the one who saves things, then she will be the one who destroys them. Either way, she will not be ignored. The destruction of the sweet spot is the most visible manifestation of Fionna's self-sabotage. But to truly understand what is happening, we need to examine the psychological mechanics at play. Self-sabotage is never a single behavior. It is a system, a pattern of interconnected thoughts, feelings, and actions that reinforce each other in a downward spiral. Fionna's episode 8 breakdown offers us a textbook case study in how this system operates. The first component is the trigger. For Fionna, triggers cluster around themes of abandonment and replaceability. When she discovers that her friends succeeded without her, both of these triggers fire simultaneously. She was abandoned, left out of the crucial final push to save the sweet spot. And she was proven replaceable, shown that the group could function, and function well, in her absence. These triggers activate a cascade of painful emotions. The second component is the emotional flood. Fionna does not experience feelings in manageable doses. When distress hits, it hits like a wall of water, overwhelming her capacity to think clearly or respond proportionately. In the moment between discovering the successful fundraiser and destroying the sweet spot, Fionna is drowning. She cannot breathe. She cannot think. She can only feel, and what she feels is unbearable. The third component is the cognitive distortion. In the grip of emotional flooding, Fionna's thinking becomes warped. She interprets her friend's success as a personal rejection rather than a team accomplishment. She sees their competence as evidence of her worthlessness rather than proof that she has surrounded herself with capable people. She transforms a positive outcome into a devastating indictment of her own value. The fourth component is the impulsive action. Unable to tolerate the feelings, unable to think clearly, Fionna acts. She kisses Felix, she climbs into the bulldozer, she destroys. The specific actions almost do not matter. What matters is that she is doing something, anything, to discharge the unbearable pressure inside her. The destruction provides momentary relief, a brief respite from the emotional storm. The fifth component is the aftermath. The moment the dust settles, the moment the impulsive energy dissipates, reality comes crashing back. Fionna stands in the rubble of the sweet spot and realizes what she has done. The guilt hits. The shame hits. She has hurt her friends. She has destroyed something beautiful. She has proven every negative belief she has about herself to be true. She is destructive. She is selfish. She does ruin everything. The sixth component is the reinforcement cycle. The shame and guilt from the aftermath become new triggers, generating new emotional floods, priming Fionna for new impulsive actions. Each cycle of self-sabotage strengthens the pattern, makes it more automatic, more difficult to interrupt. This is why self-sabotage is so persistent. It feeds on itself, each destructive act creating the conditions for the next. What makes Fionna's portrayal so psychologically accurate is that the show understands this is not about intelligence or insight. Fionna is capable of recognizing her patterns. She knows, on some level, that she is her own worst enemy. But self-sabotage operates faster than conscious awareness. By the time Fionna's rational mind catches up to what is happening, her emotional brain has already made the decision and committed to the action. The show also understands that self-sabotage serves a protective function, even when it causes enormous harm. When Fionna destroys the sweet spot, she is unconsciously protecting herself from something she fears even more than the consequences of destruction: the vulnerability of being unnecessary. If she destroys everything, she does not have to face the possibility that she might not be needed. The destruction becomes a perverse form of control. This is the cruel paradox of self-sabotage. The very behaviours that seem to protect us from our deepest fears end up confirming them. Fionna fears being abandoned, so she acts in ways that push people away, which leads to the abandonment she feared. She fears being worthless, so she destroys things, which proves her worthlessness. The protection and the wound become indistinguishable. By the end of episode 8, Fionna has hit absolute rock bottom. She has betrayed Finn to the cosmic court. She has broken Fennel's heart with an impulsive kiss. She has destroyed the community space her friends worked so hard to build. She has alienated everyone who cared about her. She stands alone in the ruins, and for the first time, she cannot avoid the truth of what she has become. Episode 9, titled The Worm and His Orchard, takes us deep into one of the most fascinating metaphysical concepts the Adventure Time franchise has ever introduced, the Undergrowth. This realm exists beneath the ordinary fabric of reality, a place where unprocessed, painful memories from across the multiverse manifest as physical objects. And it is here that Fionna will finally be forced to confront the psychological architecture that has been driving her self-destructive behavior. The Undergrowth operates according to a beautiful and terrible logic. Every painful memory that a person fails to process becomes a pain ball, a red orb that falls into this metaphysical realm and grows into a tree. These trees bear fruit, and the fruit eventually floats back up to the person of origin as thoughts, feelings, insights that help them work through their trauma, but only if the person is ready to receive them. Pain balls that are never processed remain on the trees forever, weighing down the branches, representing wounds that never heal. When Fionna arrives in the Undergrowth, she encounters Fern, the grass demon, and Finn hybrid, who died in the original series finale. Fern has found peace here, finally accepting that he is his own person rather than a copy of Finn. He tends the trees, helps the karmic worm process the multiverse's pain, and keeps watch over the trauma trees of people he cares about, including Finn's. Fern shows Fionna to Finn's trauma tree, and what she sees there is devastating. The tree is heavy, overloaded with pain balls that have never floated back up. We see orbs representing Finn's lost arm, his failed relationships, his father's abandonment, his countless brushes with death. But one orb dominates all the others, massive and dark, pulsing with an intensity that makes even looking at it feel dangerous. Fionna reaches out to touch this largest pain ball, and for just a moment she glimpses what it contains. Finn, screaming in absolute horror and agony, a single word tearing from his throat: Jake. The pain ball shows us nothing more, but the implication is clear. Jake's death was not peaceful. It was not the natural passing of an old dog. Something terrible happened. Something so traumatic that Finn has buried it deeper than any other wound. Fern yanks Fionna away before she can see more. You do not want to know, he tells her. His voice carries a weight that suggests he has seen the full memory and wishes he had not. This single moment recontextualizes everything we thought we knew about Finn's character in Season 2. His impulsivity, his distance from his friends, his willingness to throw himself into dangerous situations without regard for his own safety. All of it stems from this unprocessed grief, this wound so deep he cannot even look at it. But the Undergrowth does not only reveal Finn's pain, it also reveals Fionna's. We see one of her pain balls, and it shows us something we have never seen before. Fionna, as a child, alone in an animal shelter, playing only with the cats, no parents, no family, no one coming to claim her. The implication is unmistakable. Fionna grew up unwanted, abandoned, finding comfort only in the company of animals who could not leave her. This revelation explains everything. Fionna's desperate need to be needed, her terror of being replaced, her compulsive helping, her inability to sit still, her frantic attempts to prove her worth through action. All of it traces back to this fundamental wound. She was a child no one wanted. She learned early that love is conditional, that you must earn your place in the world, that the moment you stop being useful is the moment you get thrown away. The Undergrowth sequence also introduces us to the karmic worm, brother of the cosmic owl. who tends this realm and processes the multiverse's collective trauma. In a surprising twist, we learn that the cosmic owl's death was not murder at all. The owl deliberately staged his own demise, a form of suicide by cop, because he could no longer bear the burden of delivering croak dreams, of being the messenger of death. When the karmic worm breaks one of the cosmic owl's pain balls, the owl is reborn, and he immediately confesses the truth, clearing Finn of the charges Fionna placed against him. This absolution is a gift Fionna does not deserve. She blamed an innocent man for a crime that turns out to have been no crime at all. But the Undergrowth is not interested in punishment. It is interested in healing. The realm exists to help people process their pain, not to judge them for the mistakes that pain caused them to make. Even Fionna, who has done terrible things this season, is treated with compassion in this space. Cake, meanwhile, finds something unexpected in the Undergrowth. She connects with the karmic worm in a way she has never connected with anyone. He understands her, he sees her, and when the time comes to leave, Cake chooses to stay. She wants to explore this connection, to understand herself better, to finally confront her own inner truth. This decision will prove crucial in the finale, but for now, it represents a kind of emotional maturity that Fionna has not yet achieved. The Undergrowth episode forces Fionna to see herself clearly for perhaps the first time. She sees that she is not unique in her pain. She sees that everyone carries wounds, some visible, some hidden. She sees that Finn, the greatest hero she knows, is just as broken as she is, and she begins to understand, though she is not yet ready to fully accept, that healing requires more than heroic action. It requires sitting with the pain, processing it, letting it transform into something that can float back up and become wisdom. When Fionna returns to her world alone, something has shifted. She is not healed. She is not fixed. The damage she caused still exists, and she still has to face the consequences of her actions. But she has seen the architecture of her own pain. She understands, at least intellectually, why she does the things she does. And that understanding is the first step towards something better. One of the most sophisticated narrative choices in Fionna and Cake Season 2 is the decision to run Fionna's story parallel to Finn's. These two characters, born from the same creative impulse, gender-swapped reflections of each other, find themselves facing eerily similar psychological battles. But where Fionna's self-sabotage manifests as explosive action, Finn's takes the form of quiet withdrawal. Understanding this parallel illuminates both characters in ways that would be impossible if we saw either story in isolation. Finn enters Season 2 already wounded. During the events of Season 1, he helped Fionna and Simon on their multiverse adventure, and in the process, he was poisoned by a magical bear in the heart of the forest. But the physical poisoning is almost secondary to the psychological damage Finn carries. He is a man in his early 30s who has lost everyone he ever loved. His father abandoned him. His mother exists only as a digital consciousness on a distant island. His romantic relationships have all ended in heartbreak, and Jake, his brother, his best friend, his constant companion through every adventure, is dead. The show is deliberately vague about exactly how Jake died, and this ambiguity serves a purpose. When Fionna glimpses Finn's largest pain ball in the Undergrowth, she sees only a flash. Finn screaming Jake's name in absolute horror. Fern pulls her away before she can see more, warning her that she does not want to know. The implication is that Jake's death was not peaceful, not natural, not the gentle passing of an old dog who lived a good life. Something terrible happened, and Finn has buried that memory so deep that even his own psyche cannot process it. This unprocessed grief explains everything about Finn's behaviour in Season 2. He throws himself into dangerous situations without regard for his own safety. He distances himself from the people who care about him. He refuses help even when he desperately needs it. These are not the actions of someone who wants to live. They are the actions of someone who cannot bear the weight of his own survival. Finn's self-sabotage takes the form of self-destruction, where Fionna destroys external things, relationships and buildings, and trust. Finn destroys himself. He lets the poison spread through his body. He ignores the warnings of Huntress Wizard. He enters the heart of the forest, knowing the dangers. On some level, perhaps unconscious, perhaps not, Finn is trying to follow Jake into death. He cannot process the grief, so he tries to escape it entirely. The parallel between Fionna and Finn becomes explicit in the dream sequences of Episode 6, The Bird in the Clock. Fionna enters Finn's coma dreams and watches him die over and over again, killed by clock monsters in increasingly gruesome ways. Each time he dies, he forgets what happened and starts over, cheerfully asking Fionna who she is, commenting that she seems like a girl version of Jake. The repetition is nightmarish, but it also reveals something crucial about Finn's psychology. Finn has been dying symbolically for years. Each death in the dream represents a piece of himself that he has sacrificed, a wound he has accumulated, a loss he has refused to mourn. The clock imagery is not subtle. Time is running out. Finn cannot keep avoiding his pain forever. Eventually, the poison will kill him, or the grief will consume him, or both. The coma dream is his psyche's desperate attempt to process what his conscious mind refuses to acknowledge. Fionna watches Finn die dozens of times in that dream sequence, and the experience traumatizes her. She emerges covered in his green blood, shaking, unable to understand how he keeps going, how he maintains his cheerful demeanor in the face of endless death. But the answer is simple and devastating. Finn keeps going because he does not remember. Each death wipes his memory clean. He is trapped in a loop of his own making, experiencing the same pain over and over without ever learning from it. This is exactly what Fionna does, just externalized rather than internalized. She makes the same impulsive mistakes over and over. She hurts the people she loves in the same ways repeatedly. She forgets, or ignores, or rationalizes away the lessons she should have learned. Both characters are trapped in cycles of self-destruction, and both cycles are rooted in the same fundamental problem, an inability to sit with pain long enough to process it. The season draws this parallel explicitly when it reveals that both Fionna and Finn have trauma trees in the Undergrowth. Finn's tree is massive, overloaded with pain balls that never float back up. His largest pain ball, the one containing Jake's death, dominates the entire tree. But Fionna has her own tree, her own collection of unprocessed wounds, her childhood abandonment, her failed relationships, her countless small betrayals and disappointments. She is not as dramatically wounded as Finn, but she is wounded in the same way. What makes this parallel so powerful is that it suggests self-sabotage is not about the severity of trauma, but about the response to it. Finn has experienced horrors that would break most people, but his self-destruction stems not from the horrors themselves, but from his refusal to feel them. Fionna's wounds are smaller, more ordinary, but she responds to them in exactly the same way. She converts pain into action. She avoids sitting with discomfort. She keeps moving forward without ever looking back. The season suggests that healing requires the opposite approach. It requires stopping. It requires feeling. It requires allowing the pain to exist without trying to fix it or escape it or convert it into something else. This is what the Undergrowth represents. A place where pain can simply be, where it can transform at its own pace into wisdom. But neither Fionna nor Finn knows how to stop. They are both heroes, and heroes act. The idea of passive surrender feels like death to them, even when action is what is actually killing them. By the time we reach the finale, this parallel will converge. Fionna will enter Finn's mind to save him, and in doing so, she will confront her own reflection. She will see that the hero she admires most is just as broken as she is, and that recognition will be the first step toward genuine healing for both of them. Fionna and Cake Season 2 is not only a psychological character study, it is also a meditation on community, on what it means to belong somewhere, and on what happens when our need to belong becomes distorted into a need to be essential. The Sweet Spot storyline, which runs through the entire season, serves as the perfect vehicle for exploring these themes. Gary Prince, the gender-swapped version of Princess Bubblegum, dreams of creating a community gathering space. He calls it the Sweet Spot, and he envisions it as a place where everyone in their newly magical city can come together, share food, share stories, share themselves. It is a beautiful dream, one rooted in genuine care for others, and Fionna immediately attaches herself to it. On the surface, Fionna's involvement in the Sweet Spot project seems entirely positive. She helps with construction, she runs errands, she solves problems. She throws herself into the work with the same passion she brought to saving the multiverse. But beneath this surface lies something more complicated. Fionna does not just want to help build the sweet spot, she needs the sweet spot to need her. This distinction is crucial. Healthy community involvement means contributing what you can while accepting that others contribute too. It means recognizing that you are one part of a larger whole, valuable but not irreplaceable. Fionna cannot accept this. She needs to be the most important contributor, the indispensable helper, the one without whom the project would fail. Her involvement is not really about the community at all. It is about proving her own worth. We see this dynamic play out repeatedly throughout the season. When Queenie threatens the lot, Fionna wants to handle it personally. When obstacles arise, Fionna insists on solving them herself. When other people step up to help, Fionna feels threatened rather than relieved. She cannot celebrate her friend's competence because their competence diminishes her importance. Every time someone else succeeds, a part of Fionna experiences it as a personal failure. The fundraiser in episode 8 brings this dynamic to its crisis point. Fionna is pulled away to the cosmic court just as the final push to save the sweet spot begins. She misses everything. Cake's organizational triumph, Marshall Lee's emotional performance, the community coming together to save what they built. When she returns, the sweet spot is saved, and she had nothing to do with it. A healthy person would feel relief. A healthy person would feel proud of their friends. A healthy person would recognize that the success of the project is what matters, not who gets credit for it. But Fionna is not healthy, not in this way. She feels betrayed, she feels abandoned, she feels replaced. The success of her friends becomes evidence of her own worthlessness. This is the dark side of community involvement that the season explores with unflinching honesty. Community can be a source of healing and connection, but it can also become a stage for our worst psychological dynamics to play out. Fionna uses the Sweet Spot project as a way to prove her value, and when that proof is denied, she destroys the very thing she claimed to care about. The bulldozer scene is not just about Fionna's impulsivity. It is about what happens when we confuse belonging with being indispensable. The season also explores this theme through the contrast between Fionna's world and U. In U, community exists naturally. Princess Bubblegum runs the Candy Kingdom with the help of countless citizens. Marceline moves through the world, connected to dozens of friends and acquaintances. Simon is surrounded by people who care about him. Community in U is something you participate in, not something you have to earn. Fionna's world is different. It was created from Simon's memories of mundane pre-Mushroom War Earth, a world of capitalism and individualism and competition. In this world, community does not exist naturally. It has to be built, fought for, defended, and this shapes how Fionna relates to community. She sees it as something fragile, something that can be lost, something that depends on her constant effort to maintain. She cannot relax into community because she does not trust it to hold her. This lack of trust traces back to her childhood abandonment. A child who grows up unwanted learns that connection is conditional. Love can be withdrawn at any moment. Belonging is not a right, but a privilege that must be constantly earned. Fionna carries this belief into adulthood, and it poisons every community she tries to join. She cannot simply be a member. She has to be the most important member, or else she is nothing. The Sweet Spot storyline ultimately offers a vision of healthier community. By the end of the season, Fionna's friends have not abandoned her despite her destruction. They are hurt, yes, they are angry, but they give her the opportunity to make amends. They let her help rebuild what she destroyed. They model a form of community that does not require perfection, that can absorb mistakes and betrayals, and still continue, in quote. This is the community Fionna has always wanted but never believed could exist. If Fionna represents self-sabotage through impulsivity, and Finn represents self-sabotage through withdrawal, then Huntress Wizard represents something different. Self-sabotage through excessive sacrifice. Her arc in Season 2 provides a crucial counterpoint to Fionna's journey, showing us another way that heroism can become a form of self-destruction. Huntress Wizard enters the season on a mission. Finn is dying from magical poisoning, and she is determined to save him. This determination drives her across dimensions, through dangers that would stop most people, into territories where no one should venture. She kills the cosmic owl to prevent Finn's croak dream. She travels to the heart of the forest, despite knowing its dangers. She sacrifices pieces of herself at every turn, all in service of saving the man she loves. On the surface, this looks like pure heroism. Huntress Wizard is doing what heroes do, putting others before herself, making sacrifices for the greater good. But the season gradually reveals something more complicated. Huntress Wizard's sacrifices are not entirely selfless. They are also a way of avoiding her own needs, her own feelings, her own vulnerability. We learn about Huntress Wizard's backstory through fragments scattered across the season. As a child, she watched her adoptive parents die in a fire. This trauma shaped her into someone who keeps emotional distance, who refuses to depend on others, who expresses care through action rather than words. She cannot say, "I love you" to Finn, but she can cross the multiverse to save his life. The sacrifice is easier than the intimacy. This dynamic becomes explicit in her interactions with Fionna. Huntress Wizard is constantly frustrated by Fionna's impulsivity, her inability to think before acting, her tendency to make things worse. But Fionna sees something that Huntress cannot see in herself. that Huntress's excessive sacrifice is just another form of the same problem. Both women use action to avoid feeling. They just choose different actions. The scene where Huntress Wizard explodes at Dream Finn is particularly revealing. She watches him hurt himself over and over, accumulating injuries through carelessness and recklessness, and she cannot take it anymore. She calls him a stupid, blundering meat sack. She rages at him for making her worry, for making her care, for putting her in the position of having to save him. Beneath the anger is something deeper, terror. Huntress Wizard cannot bear to lose another person she loves, so she converts that fear into fury at Finn for being someone she could lose. This is the same dynamic that drives her sacrifices. By focusing entirely on saving Finn, Huntress Wizard can avoid acknowledging how much she needs him. By making herself indispensable to his survival, she can pretend that their relationship is about her strength rather than her vulnerability. The sacrifice becomes a wall, a way of keeping emotional distance, even while performing acts of apparent devotion. The season brings this dynamic to its climax when Huntress Wizard scatters herself across the multiverse. In her desperate attempt to save Finn, she plants seeds of herself in multiple dimensions, creating alternate versions that can gather the energy needed to heal him. But this scattering is also a kind of death. She loses her coherent self, becomes fragments, exists in pieces across reality. The sacrifice is total, and it mirrors the way she has always lived, giving herself away piece by piece, rather than risking the wholeness of genuine connection. What saves Huntress Wizard, ultimately, is not her sacrifice, but her willingness to receive. When her scattered selves converge, when she becomes the new heart of the forest, she is not just giving anymore. She is also taking in, absorbing, allowing the energy of others to flow through her. This reciprocity, this balance of giving and receiving, is what was always missing from her heroism. She could not heal Finn through sacrifice alone. She needed to also accept help, accept connection, accept the vulnerability of being someone who needs. Fionna learns from watching Huntress Wizard's arc. She sees that sacrifice, without receiving, is not heroism, but another form of self-destruction. She sees that true connection requires vulnerability, requires admitting that you need others as much as they need you. This lesson will prove crucial in the finale, when Fionna must enter Finn's mind not as a hero coming to save him, but as a broken person, reaching out to another broken person. The finale of Fionna and Cake Season 2, titled The Bear and the Rose, takes us into the deepest reaches of Finn's psychology. After Huntress Wizard heals his body by becoming the new heart of the forest, Finn remains comatose. His soul is trapped in limbo, caught between life and death, unable to return to his healed body. The only way to save him is to go inside his mind and bring him back. Fionna volunteers for this mission, and the choice is significant. She is not the obvious candidate. Huntress Wizard loves Finn. Princess Bubblegum has known him for decades. Simon was there when Finn was just a baby adventurer. But Fionna insists, and eventually everyone agrees. Perhaps they recognize what Fionna herself is only beginning to understand. That she needs to do this not just for Finn, but for herself. The journey into Finn's subconscious is a tour through Adventure Time's history. Fionna passes through locations from Finn's past adventures. The entrance to Pillow World, the pit where he and Sweet Pea defeated the Lich, the earldom of Lemongrab, the stomach of the Party Bear's monster. Each location represents a memory, an experience that shaped who Finn became. The geography of his mind is the geography of his life. But Fionna is not here as a tourist. She is searching for Finn's core self, the essential Finn, who has retreated so deep into his own psyche that he cannot find his way back. She follows instructions from Bellamy Bug, a creature from Finn's imagination who appeared in a single episode of the original series 15 years ago. The callback is deliberate. Finn's mind is populated by every character he ever met, every moment he ever lived, and somewhere in that vast internal landscape, the real Finn is hiding. She finds him in a chest, curled up, refusing to come out. The chest bears the numbers 4, 5, 10, the air date of the very first Adventure Time episode. Finn has retreated all the way back to the beginning, to a time before loss, before grief, before Jake's death shattered something fundamental in him. He does not want to return to consciousness because consciousness means remembering. And remembering means feeling the full weight of what he lost. The conversation between Fionna and Finn inside his mind is the emotional heart of the entire season. Fionna does not try to convince Finn that everything will be okay. She does not minimize his grief or offer false comfort. Instead, she tells him about Huntress Wizard, about everything Huntress sacrificed to save him. She tells him that people are waiting for him, that his life has meaning, that his pain is real, but so is the love that surrounds him. But perhaps more importantly, Fionna tells Finn about herself. She admits her own failures, her own self-sabotage, her own inability to process pain in healthy ways. She tells him that she learned something from watching him, from seeing his trauma tree, from understanding that even the greatest heroes carry wounds they cannot heal alone. She does not come to him as a rescuer. She comes as someone equally broken, equally struggling, equally in need of grace. This is what finally reaches Finn. Not heroic speeches or promises of adventure, just the simple recognition that he is not alone in his brokenness. Fionna sits with him in the chest, in the darkness, in the place where he has hidden from his grief. She does not try to drag him out, she just stays. And eventually, Finn chooses to leave on his own. The scene where Finn finally processes Jake's death happens off-screen, in the space between Fionna reaching him and Finn waking up. We do not see the full memory, we do not learn exactly what happened, but we see the result. Finn opens his eyes, returns to consciousness, and immediately embraces Huntress Wizard. The pain is still there, it will always be there, but it is no longer the only thing. For Fionna, the experience inside Finn's mind is transformative. She went in as someone who had destroyed everything, who had hit rock bottom, who had proven every negative belief about herself true. She comes out as someone who was able to help, not through heroic action, but through presence and vulnerability. She did not save Finn by being strong. She saved him by being honest about her own weakness. The finale does not give Fionna an easy redemption. Too many stories let their protagonists off the hook, washing away the consequences of their actions with a quick apology and an implied happily ever after. Fionna and Cake Season 2 refuses this cheap resolution. Fionna did terrible things. She must face the consequences. When she returns from Finn's mind, Fionna does not find her friends waiting with open arms. Marshall, Lee, and Gary are still hurt. The sweet spot is still destroyed. The trust Fionna broke is still broken. Nothing has been magically fixed by her journey into Finn's subconscious. She has grown, yes. She understands herself better, but understanding is not the same as atonement. The show handles this with remarkable grace. We see Fionna begin the slow work of making amends. She helps rebuild the sweet spot, putting in physical labour alongside the friends she hurt. She apologizes, not once but repeatedly, not in grand gestures, but in small, consistent actions. She shows up. She follows through. She does the boring, unglamorous work of proving that she has changed. Her friends do not forgive her immediately. They cannot. The wounds are too fresh, the betrayal too deep. But they give her the opportunity to earn forgiveness over time. This is what healthy community looks like. Not unconditional acceptance of harmful behavior, but conditional openness to repair. Fionna can come back, but she has to demonstrate through sustained effort that coming back is what she actually wants. The scene where Fionna bakes a cake for Gary and Marshall is perfect in its imperfection. The cake is terrible. It is made of hot dogs and mustard and relish, a culinary abomination that no one would actually want to eat. But Gary eats it anyway, because the gesture matters more than the execution. Fionna is trying. She is showing up. She is doing something other than running away or blowing things up, and that counts for something. Fionna also ends things with Felix, DJ Flame, in a conversation that demonstrates real growth. She tells him that she was pursuing him for the wrong reasons, always forcing a happy ending instead of letting the relationship develop naturally. This is insight that the Fionna of earlier episodes could never have articulated. She was too busy acting on impulse to examine her motivations. Now she can see the patterns, and seeing them is the first step towards changing them. The season does not pretend that Fionna is fixed. She will probably make impulsive mistakes again. She will probably hurt people she loves. The patterns of self-sabotage run deep, and they do not disappear overnight. But something fundamental has shifted. Fionna has seen herself clearly. She has witnessed the architecture of her own pain. She knows why she does the things she does, and that knowledge gives her a fighting chance at doing things differently. The final image of Fionna's arc is not a triumph, but a beginning. She discovers that her city is the only settlement on the planet, that beyond its walls lies an entire world waiting to be explored. She sets off with Cake, Fennel, and Hunter into this unknown territory, not as a hero on a mission, but as a person looking for a new start. The adventure continues, but it continues differently now. Fionna is not running from her pain anymore. She is walking towards something new. In any discussion of Fionna's psychology, we must also examine the character who has been beside her from the very beginning. Cake the cat is not merely a sidekick or a comedic relief. She is Fionna's anchor, her conscience, her most consistent relationship, and in Season 2, Cake undergoes her own transformation, one that mirrors and illuminates Fionna's journey in unexpected ways. Cake has always been the stable one. Where Fionna is impulsive, Cake is measured. Where Fionna rushes into danger, Cake counsels caution. Where Fionna's emotions explode outward, Cake's run deeper and quieter. This dynamic served them well in Season 1, when the multiverse needed saving and Fionna's heroic energy was exactly what was required. But Season 2 asks a different question. What happens when stability becomes stagnation? The season reveals that Cake has her own unexamined wounds, her own patterns of avoidance. She has spent so long being the responsible one, the caretaker, the voice of reason, that she has forgotten how to simply be herself. Her identity has become entirely defined by her relationship to Fionna. She is Fionna's cat, Fionna's companion, Fionna's support system. But who is she when Fionna does not need her? This question becomes urgent when Cake begins dating M-Cron, the gender-swapped version of Lady Rainicorn. The relationship forces Cake to exist as an individual rather than as half of a pair. She has to think about what she wants, what she needs, what makes her happy independent of Fionna's adventures, and she discovers that she does not really know. She has been supporting someone else for so long that she has lost touch with her own desires. The Undergrowth sequence brings Cake's journey to its climax. When she meets the karmic worm, something shifts. Here is a being who sees her, truly sees her, not as Fionna's companion, but as Cake herself. The worm understands pain and processing and the slow work of healing. He represents everything that Cake's frantic life with Fionna has never allowed. Stillness, reflection, the patience to let things unfold at their own pace. Cake's decision to stay in the Undergrowth is the bravest thing she does all season. It is not a dramatic sacrifice or a heroic gesture. It is something much harder, choosing herself. She tells Fionna that she needs to stay, needs to explore this connection, needs to understand who she is outside of their partnership, and Fionna, to her credit, lets her go. This separation is crucial for both characters. Fionna has relied on Cake as a stabilizing force, someone who would always be there to catch her when she fell. Without Cake, Fionna must develop her own internal stability. She must learn to be her own anchor. The journey into Finn's mind happens without Cake by her side, and this is not an accident. Fionna needs to prove to herself most of all that she can do hard things alone. For Cake, the time in the Undergrowth represents something equally important. She learns to exist without a crisis to manage, without someone to take care of, without the constant forward momentum of adventure. She sits with the karmic worm and simply is. This is revolutionary for a character who has always defined herself through action and caretaking. She discovers that she has value even when she is not doing anything, even when no one needs her help. The reunion between Fionna and Cake in the finale is earned because both characters have grown independently. They come back together, not out of codependence, but out of genuine choice. Cake returns from the Undergrowth having found herself. Fionna has survived her darkest moment and emerged with new understanding. Their partnership continues, but it continues on healthier terms. They are two whole people choosing to walk together, not two half people clinging to each other for completion. This is the quiet revolution at the heart of Season 2. The show is not just about Fionna learning to stop sabotaging herself. It is about both members of this partnership learning to exist as individuals so that they can come together as equals. Cake's journey is less dramatic than Fionna's, less marked by spectacular failures and tearful reconciliations. But it is no less important. Sometimes the hardest thing is not to act heroically, but to simply stop, breathe, and figure out who you are. Forgiveness is one of the most misunderstood concepts in our psychological vocabulary. Popular culture often presents forgiveness as something you do for the person who wronged you, a gift you give to release them from their guilt. But the show understands something deeper. Forgiveness is primarily something you do for yourself, and the path to forgiveness, both giving and receiving, is far more complicated than any simple apology can capture. Fionna spends the back half of Season 2 wrestling with forgiveness from multiple angles. She needs to be forgiven by the friends she hurt. She needs to forgive herself for the damage she caused. And she needs to grapple with the question of whether some things are unforgivable, whether some betrayals are too deep to repair. The show refuses easy answers. When Fionna blamed Finn for the Cosmic Owl's death, she committed a profound betrayal. She threw an innocent, dying man under the cosmic bus to save herself from consequences she deserved. This is not a small thing. It is not the kind of mistake you can wave away with a sincere apology and a promise to do better. Some part of that betrayal will always exist, will always be part of Fionna's story. And yet the show also refuses to condemn Fionna permanently. It holds two truths simultaneously. What she did was wrong, and she is still capable of growth and redemption. These truths do not cancel each other out. They exist in tension, and that tension is where real moral complexity lives. The Cosmic Owl's resurrection complicates the forgiveness question in interesting ways. When the owl reveals that his death was actually a suicide, that Huntress Wizard did not murder him, but rather assisted in his escape from an unbearable existence, Finn is cleared of all charges. The crime Fionna blamed him for turns out not to have been a crime at all. Does this absolve Fionna of her betrayal? The show suggests that it does not. The fact that Finn was ultimately exonerated does not change what Fionna did or why she did it. She did not know the owl would be resurrected. She did not know the charges would be dropped. In the moment of her betrayal, she was willing to let an innocent man suffer to protect herself. That willingness is the wound, regardless of how things turned out. This is an important distinction. We often judge our actions by their consequences rather than their intentions. If things work out okay, we tell ourselves that what we did was not so bad. The show rejects this moral arithmetic. Fionna must reckon with her betrayal, not because it caused lasting harm to Finn, but because it revealed something about herself that she needs to face. The forgiveness Fionna receives from her friends is conditional and earned. It does not come automatically. It does not come because she apologizes or because she feels bad. It comes because she demonstrates, through sustained action over time, that she is committed to being different. She rebuilds the sweet spot. She shows up consistently. She does the unglamorous work of repair. And slowly, gradually, her friends begin to trust her again. Self-forgiveness is even harder. Fionna has to find a way to live with what she did, without either minimizing it or being destroyed by it. She cannot pretend the betrayal did not happen. She cannot tell herself it was not that bad, but she also cannot spend the rest of her life paralyzed by guilt. She has to integrate the knowledge of her worst moment into a larger understanding of who she is and who she can become. The show suggests that self-forgiveness requires the same thing as receiving forgiveness from others: action. You do not forgive yourself by thinking your way to peace. You forgive yourself by becoming the kind of person who would not make the same choice again. Fionna's growth throughout the season is not just psychological insight, it is behavioral change. She learns to pause before acting. She learns to consider consequences. She learns to reach out for help instead of spiraling into destruction. These changes are what make self-forgiveness possible. Fionna and Cake Season 2 ends on a note of cautious hope, but it refuses to provide a conventional happy ending. This refusal is itself a statement about what healing actually looks like, about the difference between resolution and transformation. Popular storytelling loves the happy ending. The hero defeats the villain, gets the love interest, returns home triumphant. Everything broken is fixed. Everything lost is restored. The credits roll on a world made whole. This narrative structure is deeply satisfying because it promises that pain is temporary, that all wounds heal, that every story eventually arrives at a place of peace. But this promise is a lie, or at least a radical oversimplification. Real healing does not work like that. Real trauma does not disappear when the story ends. Real relationships, once broken, are never quite the same even when they are repaired. The show honors this reality by giving us an ending that is hopeful without being falsely redemptive. Fionna does not get everything she wants. Her friends are still cautious around her. The trust she broke is still being rebuilt. Cake has grown into someone who needs her own space, her own journey, her own life outside their partnership. Felix is not waiting for her with open arms. The romantic subplot does not resolve into coupledom. Fionna ends the season somewhat alone, setting off into unknown territory with a small group of companions who are still figuring out their feelings about her. This is not a punishment. It is not the show condemning Fionna for her failures. It is something more honest, an acknowledgement that growth takes time, that consequences persist, that you cannot undo your worst moments just by becoming a better person. Fionna is better. She has grown. But the world does not owe her a reward for that growth. She has to keep living, keep working, keep proving through action that she has changed. The ending also refuses to resolve the larger mysteries of the season. We never learn exactly how Jake died. We never see Finn fully process his grief. Huntress Wizard becomes the heart of the forest, but we do not know what that means for her future with Finn. The Scarab escapes during the chaos of the Cosmic Owl's resurrection, suggesting that threats remain in the multiverse. The story continues beyond the frame, unfinished, ongoing. This openness is thematically appropriate. Self-sabotage is not a problem you solve once and then never face again. It is a tendency you manage, a pattern you interrupt, a struggle that continues for as long as you live. Fionna will probably make impulsive mistakes in the future. She will probably hurt people she loves. The growth she achieved this season gives her better tools for catching herself, for making amends, for recovering more quickly. But it does not immunize her against future failures. The show's refusal of a happy ending is actually a gift to its audience. It says, you do not have to be fixed to be worthy. You do not have to reach some final destination of perfect mental health to deserve love and connection. The journey itself is the point. The daily effort to be better than you were yesterday, even when you fail, especially when you fail, is what matters. Fionna ends the season not as a healed person, but as a healing person, and that is enough. The final image of the season, Fionna and her companions setting off into an unexplored world beyond the city walls, captures this perfectly. They are not arriving anywhere, they are beginning. The adventure continues, but it continues with the wisdom earned through failure. Fionna knows herself better now. She knows her patterns, her triggers, her weaknesses. She knows what she is capable of at her worst. And she walks forward anyway, into the unknown, ready to try again. Fionna and Cake Season 2 is not just entertainment. It is a meditation on psychological patterns that many viewers will recognize in themselves. The show's unflinching portrayal of self-sabotage, impulsivity, and the long road to recovery offers genuine insight into how these dynamics work and how they might be addressed. The first lesson is that self-sabotage is not random. It follows predictable patterns rooted in our deepest wounds. Fionna destroys things because she fears being abandoned. Finn withdraws because he cannot face his grief. Huntress Wizard sacrifices excessively because intimacy feels more dangerous than death. Once you understand the logic of your own self-sabotage, you have a chance of interrupting it. You can learn to recognize the triggers, the emotional floods, the cognitive distortions that precede your worst decisions. You can build in pauses, create space between stimulus and response, choose differently. The second lesson is that insight is necessary but not sufficient. Fionna has moments of genuine self-awareness throughout the season. She knows, on some level, that she is making things worse. But knowing does not stop her. self-sabotage operates faster than conscious thought. By the time insight catches up, the damage is done. This means that healing requires more than understanding. It requires practice, repetition, the slow rewiring of automatic responses. You have to catch yourself 1,000 times before the catching becomes automatic. The third lesson is that healing happens in relationship. Fionna cannot fix herself alone. She needs friends who will hold her accountable, who will give her opportunities to make amends, who will model healthier ways of being. She needs Cake's stability, Huntress Wizard's example, Finn's reflection of her own struggles. The show rejects the myth of the self-made person who pulls themselves up by their bootstraps. We are social creatures. We wound each other and we heal each other. There is no other way. The fourth lesson is that forgiveness is a process, not an event. You do not forgive someone once and then the wound disappears. You forgive them over and over, every time the memory surfaces, every time the old hurt flares up. And you earn forgiveness the same way, not through a single apology, but through sustained demonstration that you have changed. The show models this by refusing quick reconciliation. Fionna's friends take time to trust her again. They give her chances, but they do not pretend the betrayal never happened. This is what real forgiveness looks like. The fifth lesson is that progress is not linear. Fionna gets better, then worse, then better again. She has moments of insight followed by spectacular failures. This is how growth actually works. We do not climb steadily upward toward health. We spiral, revisiting the same issues at different levels of depth, making the same mistakes in new forms, gradually expanding our capacity to catch ourselves and recover. The show normalizes this non-linear path, offering hope to viewers who feel like they keep failing at the same things over and over. The sixth lesson is that your worst moment does not define you. Fionna betrays Finn. She destroys the sweet spot. She breaks hearts and ruins things and proves every negative belief about herself true. And yet she is still capable of growth, still worthy of love, still able to contribute something meaningful to the people around her. The show holds both truths. What Fionna did was wrong, and Fionna is not reducible to what she did. This is grace, the recognition that we are more than our failures, that redemption remains possible even after we have done terrible things. These lessons are not delivered through lectures or morals. They emerge organically from the story, from characters we have grown to love, making mistakes we recognize from our own lives. This is the power of narrative. It teaches us about ourselves by showing us ourselves reflected in fiction. Fionna and Cake Season 2 holds up a mirror, and what we see there is not always comfortable, but it is true, and truth is where healing begins. We have travelled far together through this analysis, from Fionna's initial inability to stop being a hero to her final steps into an unknown world. We have examined the psychology of self-sabotage in granular detail, traced its roots in childhood abandonment, watched it bloom into catastrophic decisions, and witnessed the slow, painful work of recovery. Now, as we conclude, we must ask what all of this means. Why does this story matter? What does it offer to those of us who see ourselves in Fionna's struggles? The answer, I think, lies in the show's fundamental compassion. Fionna and Cake Season 2 never condemns its protagonist for her failures. It shows us exactly how bad she can be, how much damage she can cause, how thoroughly she can betray the people who love her, and then it shows us that she is still worthy of redemption. Not because her crimes are minimized or excused, but because the show believes in the human capacity for growth. Fionna is not a lost cause. None of us are. This message lands differently for different viewers. For those who struggle with impulsivity, who have hurt people they love through thoughtless action, the show offers recognition. You are not alone. Your patterns have names. Your pain has roots. Understanding these things is the first step toward changing them. The show does not promise that change will be easy. Fionna's road is long and marked by setbacks. But the road exists. There is somewhere to go. For those who have been hurt by someone like Fionna, the show offers a different kind of validation. It takes seriously the damage that impulsive, self-sabotaging people can cause. It does not ask victims to forgive quickly or unconditionally. It shows friends setting boundaries, demanding accountability, taking time before trusting again. This is healthy. This is appropriate. You do not owe anyone forgiveness before they have earned it. For those who love someone like Fionna, the show offers guidance on a difficult path. Cake's journey demonstrates that you cannot fix someone else. You can support them, hold them accountable, model healthier behavior, but ultimately they have to do their own work. And you have to take care of yourself, maintain your own identity, pursue your own growth. Losing yourself in someone else's chaos does not help either of you. The show also speaks to something larger about the human condition. We are all, in our own ways, engaged in patterns of self-sabotage. We all have wounds that distort our perceptions, triggers that hijack our better judgment, automatic responses that serve us poorly. The specifics vary from person to person, but the structure is universal. We hurt ourselves, we hurt others, we feel guilty and ashamed, we promise to do better, we fail, we try again. This is not a counsel of despair. It is a recognition of reality. And recognizing reality is the foundation of genuine hope. We cannot fix what we will not face. We cannot change what we refuse to see. Fionna's journey matters because she finally looks clearly at herself, at her patterns, at the architecture of her pain. That clarity is painful. It is humiliating. It requires sitting with knowledge of your own worst moments without the comfort of denial or rationalization. But it is also liberating. Once you see the pattern, you can interrupt it. Once you understand the wound, you can begin to heal it. The adventure continues. This is the promise the show leaves us with. Fionna walks into an unexplored world, carrying everything she has learned, accompanied by friends who are still figuring out what she means to them. She is not fixed. She is not finished. She is simply further along the path than she was before, armed with self-knowledge and the hard-won willingness to keep trying. This is what we can take from her story. Not a formula for perfect mental health, not a guarantee that our struggles will end, but something more valuable. Permission to be a work in progress. Permission to fail and try again. Permission to hurt people and make amends. Permission to be broken and still worthy of love. The psychology of self-sabotage is dark territory. It forces us to confront the ways we are our own worst enemies, the ways our defenses become our prisons, the ways our attempts to protect ourselves cause the very outcomes we fear. But there is light in that darkness. There is hope in understanding. There is power in naming what has controlled us. Fionna Campbell taught us that this season. She showed us her worst self, her most destructive impulses, her most shameful moments. And then she showed us that even the worst self can grow, can learn, can become something better. That is the gift of this story. That is why it matters. That is why, long after the final credits roll, We carry Fionna with us as we walk into our own unknown territories, ready to face our own patterns, ready to begin again. The adventure continues. It always does. And now perhaps we are a little better equipped for wherever it takes us next.